Patrick Mahomes has a new deal, at least in partiality, and the Chiefs are making moves to get out of the way of themselves making moves today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. Thanks for joining us here on Locked On Chiefs, part of Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every single day on every platform, everywhere, for free, no matter what, 5 days a week plus. You everydayers, we know that you know this already. If you want to be an everydayer, make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell here on YouTube. Join us on Spotify and get subbed. Get subbed on Apple. Go to every audio platform that you like. You can find us for free. And if you want that much more information, you can always get the instant stuff over at our text line. All the locals are over there. It's our insider info at 816-357-8781. We are brought to you today by Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDON to get $20 off of your first purchase. It's Gametime. We have plenty to talk about and some fun stuff here. The big thing is the Chiefs are doing a good job of dodging those stray bullets, getting out of the way of some bad deals and making sure that they're not caught out in the open. Out in the open is where you try to make some moves, though, and Drew Tranquill is doing a heck of a job himself. Who's he trying to get on this roster? We're going to tell you about that, but it all starts and stops, obviously, with QB1 and the fact that they got a restructure done in order to gain some cap space. That's where we begin today. Chris, run down the numbers for us so we know what they were able to recoup with this restructure.
So they were able to recoup about $21.6 million. And to be clear on this is nothing really to do with the player. It's everything to do with the team. The team is the one that's doing this restructure. Mahomes doesn't have anything that really changes on him. It's still paid out the same to him. This is just a different way of accounting for it. They're changing the roster bonus into a signing bonus, basically, and prorating that out over 5 years. It is going to create a bunch of issues down the road, especially next year and the year after that, but they will adjust, and it's not going to be a big deal. But $21.6 million frees up a lot of cap space. And the biggest thing that this says to me, and I think it's saying the same thing to the NFL, is Chiefs are okay if they want to keep L'Jarius Sneed now. They have the cap room to sign their draft class. They could add a free agent or two and probably still be cap compliant for the league year. And there's other guys that they could borrow money from later if they have to. But the big deal to me is that you could keep L'Jarius Sneed on his $19 million contract, and it wouldn't be great, but you could do it. And that makes it to where you don't feel like you're being forced to trade, and other teams don't feel like they're getting extra leverage on you because you have to trade.
Yeah, and that goes a long way. And we're going to talk about those rumors coming up in the next segment. Now, the reason that Chris runs down the numbers for you is because he is the cap guy. You can find all his work over at Chiefs Corner, where he runs articles all the time on the cap, the number, the business side of this. He is the Uber fan. He'll tell you about history that I just cannot keep in my brain any longer. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, where I run down athleticism and evaluations of talent. That's what it's about. And you're going to be able to have the athletic matrix coming out here from Rogue APC very quickly as we get ready for Pro Days have already begun. Ask Bo Nix and Troy Franklin making some noise out there. And then we come back at NFL 33 and we talk about team building and some of these moves that go on around the league. It's not just Chiefs. There's a whole league out there. So we cover that there. And then RGR Football, you can get our further breakdowns and visual evidence, we like to call it. Go check out all of those. In the end, I like to have that cash on hand. Like you said, it doesn't have to be executed. It doesn't have to be signed. It's built into the contract. It allows them to roll forward. Now, whether that turns into keeping L'Jarius or not, that's the subject of a rumor right now. But it comes into just the structure of this. You can continually replace talent. We're going to be talking about that throughout the show. That's what it comes back to. They were light on talent at the receiver position this last year. They have to correct that. They've been able to fortify a number of positional groups in the draft. Wide receiver just hasn't been one of them to this point. And I think part of this, whether Sneed is here or not, I think part of it has to be used in order to get a free agent addition out there in the wide receiver group. I do think there's going to be draft picks, but I do think this can't be all in one basket now that Chris Jones is done. I do think the wide receiver needs some attention.
I agree, and I think we're going to talk about who Tranquill has been tweeting at here in a couple of minutes, but I want to talk about another guy, and I actually tweeted this out earlier. How funny would it be to see Kansas City bring in a guy like Hunter Renfrow, cut from the Raiders. If he's willing to play on a low ball contract, you bring a guy like Hunter Renfrow in. It'd be fun to see him in a Chiefs uniform and being able to go up against his old team, for the next, for 2 games a year. I do think that would be a good addition. You're right. The wide receiver position needs some help, and that's something that I think they're trying to address. And another big one hit the receiver market today. Wasn't available until he was cut from his team today. So, it's going to be something to keep watching. I apologize. I apologize if my eyes move off the screen for a moment. I am actually just trying to verify we don't miss something, because the Chiefs like to seem to drop news when we're recording
every
sometimes.
time.
Yeah,
it's this microphone. I blame it.
And free agency is big enough to where I feel like if we're in the middle of the show and something breaks, we ought to talk about it. So,
absolutely. But it all goes back to this contract that Patrick has that is allowed to recoup this money. Now, I believe they could have gotten, Matt and I discussed, they could have gotten up to 28 back. They just went with the 21, which I think is the initial provision. So they could, before I think it's May, go back and take another chunk if they have to. I don't see that happening.
I don't think they can. I think you can only restructure once a year.
Oh, I thought they had that provision in before whatever the payment is.
I don't. Well,
May.
They did, but you can only do a restructure once a year. So I think they're stuck on his contract at this point. They do have other players they can go back and adjust. And one thing I should point out, because we didn't talk about this, I think, on the Chris Jones contract, but it is kind of interesting. Their big money contracts right now, they're dumping in, not dumping, but they're putting these roster bonuses in. Like, if you go look at Jones's deal, he has a couple of roster bonuses that are going to be due in the next couple of years. And it's a matter of, and it's guaranteed money, so he's going to get it. It doesn't affect the player at all, but it gives the team flexibility to be able to adjust their cap space as they see fit, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, it basically is another smaller piggy bank compared to Mahomes. Gives them that flex, and that's what they need. They need to flex in a couple of different ways. One is the fact that they have back-to-back championships. That's a flex, and that might draw you some free agents. Drew Tranquill's doing a heck of a job trying to get that done. We're going to talk about who he's going after and if that means the team's going to go after him right after this here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We all know it's hard to get tickets to Arrowhead, and it's even harder if you're trying to go to a Jayhawk basketball game, but you shouldn't have to worry about the tickets for the next big event that you want to get to. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports events, music venues, comedy, and even theater events near you with great last-minute deals, all-in prices. You can view the seat from the app as well as the best price guarantee. Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets to your next event. And to see that seat from the beginning, that's the big thing for me. I want to know where I'm going to be and what my view is going to be. It's the best feature out there, all in prices, no hidden fees, all up front. It's a great deal that you can check it out, and you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, you just have to create the account and use the redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. It's the best way to go about it. Gametime, get it today. It's last-minute tickets, it's lowest prices, and it is guaranteed.
Really quick, I know you guys talked about signings yesterday, but I just want to say really quick, I do like the Mike Pennell signing. Bringing him back, getting another DT on the roster gives you one less thing that you have to worry about. It doesn't change the need horribly, but it does give you depth, and it gives you the ability to not have to focus on that position and get desperate at that position, I guess is really where I would go with that. Yeah,
that's fair. And I don't care if they threw Mike on the pup or, gave him camp off or whatever. He's proven that he doesn't have to have the grind the whole season. And honestly, I think I prefer it that way. Because I like the Mike Pennell signing. You got a great postseason run from him, second half of the season even. But do you really think you can count on him for 20 games again? I probably don't. So I want to see them rest him up in the early season.
No, and I agree with you on that 100%. I just look at it as that's one less person that you have to worry about. Maybe it's a situation where they don't bring Noddy back now because they have Pennell. Not the same player, obviously, but it's one less thing that you have to worry about going into the draft. And when we start talking about what we're getting ready to talk about with Tranquill, I think that's kind of where my brain is going with all this, is that, we're going to get ready to talk about 2 wide receivers. And if they go out and get 2 wide receivers and they've already got a defensive tackle, that opens up what they could really do in the draft. I mean, they still have a couple other positions you like them to go after, but it opens up a lot of different options.
And this is the formula that we've seen Brett Veach try to use, is to try to get everything kind of shored up so you don't have to do any one thing. And I think that just follows suit. Now, Drew Tranquill obviously re-signed, had some nice words to say to the media today about the reason, and that the fact that he and his family felt connected to this community right off the bat early on in the season. And clearly was let Willie Gay right off in the sunset to New Orleans with a nice send-off. And I thought that might be the end of the tweets. But no. Drew Tranquill likes to use the X button. And he decided to poke at a couple of guys. Some rumors flying around here, folks. So right now, if I had that super Hollywood Echo voice, I would say Chiefs rumors, that kind of thing. And what it is talking to an ex-friend, an ex-teammate of his, who, like you said in the first segment, had just been released. Mike Williams, who's been a thorn in this team's side, going up and over good DBs on this roster for the last several years, is now out there in the wild, untethered and unrestrained, and happened to play with Drew Tranquill. So, he's trying to make a point. I can't remember the phrase that he used, but he's trying to equate, Mike, now that you don't have to be traded. They clearly wanted to move on from you. You might as well check out what it is to be, in red in some way, shape, or form. How do you take that?
So I love it. I mean, he's out there trying to recruit guys. It's see red and thank Super Bowls. It's the exact message that Andy Reid gave him. I was sitting there looking at that while you were talking about it, because I knew I could find it. But see red, win Super Bowls. That's the message that Andy Reid gave him. Or in thanks Super Bowls, I apologize. It's the message Andy Reid gave him before Tranquill signed last year. It's his message to free agents. And when you start looking at guys like Mike Williams, the beautiful thing about a Mike Williams contract, and I actually tweeted this out earlier today because I saw that he got released, and it was interesting to me because one of the things you could do with Mike Williams is throw him a $3 million or $2 or $3 million baseline deal. And then go out and offer him $5 million for, I don't know, 500 to 750 receiving yards, another $5 million for 5 to 10 TDs or somewhere in there, or maybe 8
make
TDs.
It huge incentives, right?
Right, and another $5 million for 40 or 60 or however many catches you want it to be, and all of that is not likely to be earned because he went out in September. His numbers last year were so far down that it's a huge deal. And you need to be fair about it as well. He hasn't missed that much time in his career. He missed last year and he missed the playoff game. But before that, he was usually playing 15 games a season. So when you look at that overall, giving him something like a $3 to $4 million baseline salary and then giving him something with huge incentives that he has to go chase. And you can even do per game roster bonuses if you don't feel like he's going to be somebody you could trust to be playing every week. You could get a contract to where it could pay him, close to $20 million by building with incentives.
I think that would be pretty interesting. Now, I have to say, I thought the contract the Chargers gave him was one of the biggest mistakes in the last few years in free agency in trying to get that secured. I don't know that he's ever lived up to a $20 million payday, so I don't even know if you have to make those incentives equal that, to tell you the truth. But if you feel like you have to, I can get down with that. That'll work, because he played, like you said, 250 yards last year. I think it was like a grand total. I got to look at snap counts. It wasn't that much. But he's coming down from 21 was 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. 22 was almost 900 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's still got something to offer. But this is a guy that's played 7 seasons for the most part. Obviously, a little light on last season. But what would that mean for this roster? It'd mean that Rashee Rice likely has somebody that draws coverage away from him on the other side, and you can stack him and Kels to one side and let Rashee kind of run. And then your concept of adding another slot type corner receiver works. But he's not the only guy out there too. Another rumor out there is that Hollywood Brown might be a target for the Kansas City Chiefs, especially if a trade is reached with L'Jarius Sneed. I've been on record on RGR saying that, I'm not against it, but I'm not super running out to sign Hollywood Brown, just given his track record. But what does that do for you should he join this roster? What's the pluses?
Well, the rumor is the reality is it's a done deal. As soon as Sneed is traded, he'll be a Chief. And there's a couple different people that are talking about it, but you look at it, and I think he adds an element of speed to this team that they don't have. Somebody that can take some, the top off the defense to an extent, and he brings a veteran presence to this roster that they really don't have. I guess if you want to call Justin Watson a veteran, you can, but I don't think it's the same as having a guy that's been a little bit more productive than Watson. So to me, I think that it would be a big signing. The question is what's it going to come down and what's it going to cost? And one of the bigger questions when it comes to that is you look at what happened today. Like Calvin Ridley got a contract for $92 million, $50 million guaranteed. And we're going to talk about that in the next segment. But the point is, it's fair though. But the point is that's going to affect what Hollywood Brown is going to get. Like regardless of whether or not it should, it's going to. So I know they're not the same receiver, but bigger contracts bring the entire market up. So it's going to be something to watch, and maybe that complicated things. Maybe that's why it's not done yet at this point.
Could be. He reached his peak in 2021, also much like Mike Williams, with over 1,000 yards for Baltimore that year, 6 touchdowns. And while last year was, again, subpar at 574 and 4 touchdowns, he hit 6, what is it, 6? No, it's 5 seasons. 4 of them have been over 700 yards. So you're getting a guy that fits in. I'd have to go double check that on each one, but it was
the reason I ask. It was how many?
I believe it's 12. I'm counting rows here.
And 500 yards. That's not horrible. It's not great. But I guess my point is when I asking that question is go look at who his QB was last year.
Right.
Like there is some part of that you have to take into account when you're signing some of these guys, especially guys that are coming from Arizona who were dealing with horrible QB play a lot of last year and questionable stuff in Baltimore. The couple of years that he was in Baltimore before Jackson started to figure it out passing wise.
Yeah. And so he does bring generally that speed option, and he can be, I think, more of a role player, much like MVS. If he puts up 700, which he's done every season but this last one, I think that's enough input into the offense that, especially with the type of routes that he can run in running away from the defenses, that gets it done. That's what they're looking for. It doesn't have to be an alpha number 1 wide receiver. You're trying to add to a group so that you have 5 out there.
So interestingly enough, if he put in 700 yards, that's the only person that would be even close to that other than Rashee Rice or Travis Kelce would be Justin Watson, and he was at 460.
Right.
Like you go look at the yardage. Okay, so total 4,400 yards basically receiving from the Chiefs receivers and tight ends last year. And I guess running backs are in that as well. Take out about a little under 2,000, and you have 2,300 yards between 1, 2, 3, like 13 guys. You're not talking about guys that are averaging a ton of yardage. So getting 700 yards from one guy, and that's going to also make the others better as well because they're not going to be going up against the higher competition. So it's a win-win.
It definitely is. Now, you mentioned it. A couple of bullets have been dodged here. And whatever these rumors are, keeping yourself out of bad contracts is something that the Chiefs have been getting better at over the years, especially under Brett Veach. A little rough to begin with, cleaner every single season. They've done it again. But what does that mean, and how does the market unfold for them? That's coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer.
Make sure you check out the Locked On Sports Today feed. It is 24/7. It's going to run down a bunch of the information that you need to know here in free agency, including some of the rumors that come true. Now, there were a lot of rumors before the Chiefs got into this free agent period. One of them in particular was a receiver down in Jacksonville last season that half of Chiefs Kingdom wanted, the other half wanted to never see again. And in the end, he goes to another AFC team, and Calvin Ridley signs a gargantuan contract at, on average, I think it's 22.3 per year. And if the Chiefs had been in on that, I would be spinning in circles right now, because that is something that would have ruined this entire offseason, spending that kind of money. They may have had interest at first. I can freely admit that, but they dodged that bullet by getting out of that negotiation, because that is a complete overpay.
Well, it's interesting because you have a situation where it sounds like the Patriots were involved for about $22 million a year. The Jaguars are involved for about $20 million a year. And at the very last moment, the Titans came in and gave him to almost $23 million a year. It is insane money for a receiver that has not produced at 29 years old. That's the bigger deal. I mean, essentially, and we don't really know how the contract unfolds. Is the $50 million fully guaranteed, or is it just guaranteed for injury in year 1 or year 2? I mean, there's some questions there, because basically, if that whole $50 million isn't guaranteed, this could be a 2-year deal. But that's still a lot of money to tie up in a receiver at that age, especially considering, look who else you have on your roster. DeAndre Hopkins is not a spring chicken. And I love DeAndre Hopkins. He's a fantastic wide receiver, but you're going to have 2 of those guys that are going to be basically 30 years old or more starting the season as your 1-2 punch. Are they good? Yes. Calvin really did not seem to be on the same level that I thought that he would be last year. Maybe he needs more time playing. Maybe it will come back to him a little bit more, but that time off really seemed to hurt a little bit.
I tell you what, sometimes it's just good to be lucky and get out of your own way. I mean, this is certainly one of them. What else stands out to you in what we've seen from other teams' actions here in free agency that you feel they got out of their own way to help this roster move forward?
It sounds like Kansas City was interested in Deontay Johnson. It sounds like they were talking to his agent, trying to get something done, and the Steelers came back and said they're not going to trade him to the Chiefs. And while I can understand why people are upset, I'm actually a little bit happy about it. I don't think that would be a great fit, and I don't like the chemistry aspect of what he would bring to this roster. And I guess the bigger question is, what were they willing to give up to get him? Because a 5th or a 6th round pick, I guess I probably would have risked it for a year. But one of the things that, we talked about Drew Tranquill, but what we didn't get into in the last segment was one of the things that he said when he was talking to the media. It's funny, he was talking to the media. He actually broke that Mike Pennell was coming back, but that's a whole other story. No, but he was talking to the media and he said, this franchise, their culture, everything they've built is towards a championship. That is how they built this roster. That is how they built everything. And I think that is such a huge key that I think we overlook. I mean, you look at Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, they all have that one clear mindset, and they're chasing greatness. They're not about, don't get me wrong, Jones got his money, great, whatever, but they're not about themselves. They're about the team. They're trying to do what they can to be the best for their team. And say what you want, Jones got double teamed 70% of the time last year. That was huge, and that affected everything else.
Yeah. Top to
so
bottom.
Dodging the bullet with Deontay Johnson. Sorry, I kind of went off on a diatribe, but the point is that you don't want to screw with the culture. You don't want to screw with the chemistry. And I think that's also why you will see the Chiefs shy away from some moves people think that they should make, because the player is so good. they're going to look at the whole aspect of it and say, did they really fit our culture? Do they really fit our chemistry? Are they going to come in and rock the boat? Because they already have guys. Sorry, Kadarius Toney, but they already have guys that do that.
Hey, and we have to be honest. This is a team that has established this culture and built it up. It's now easier to cause a misstep and detract from the way this is built than to add on to it. So you have to be very careful about the new voices you bring in, especially when you're losing, key contributors, guys that bring energy like Willie Gay. I think there are going to be some gaps here in some of the day-to-day locker room fits, on-field fits that you have to be very cognizant of. But tomorrow's a brand new day, and there could be new acquisitions.
I expect that there will be new acquisitions. I think that there's just some stuff that's holding it up. And the other thing that I will say, one of the other reasons, and I should have said this in the restructure part, but one of the other reasons it was such a brilliant move, other than it gets people off their backs for trading for Snead, making them think that they need to trade him, is now if you trade Snead, you free up close to $20 million more dollars. You have your own guys you can go pay now. Yeah. You have guys that are on their third-year deals that are going into their fourth years in Creed Humphrey, and you have a guy in Nick Bolton, and whether or not they're going to pay Trey Smith, you can go extend those guys and give them some money this year against the salary cap and be in a much better position going forward. So it works in everything.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We're going to see what happens. We are on L'Jarius Sneed watch at this point. We're going to give you some content, do some breakdowns about things that may not be happening on the daily, but if news breaks, you will find content from us. So make sure you like and sub and hit that bell so you see the new content as soon as it comes out. We'll hit you on the text line if something newsworthy breaks. We'll also be on all the audio platforms, so get sub there. Check out Locked On Sports today. Everything is always changing, and we're going to do our best to keep up with it. We'll have some content for you that takes the girth in case the Chiefs decide to just kind of sit out for a week and wait for free agency to come back around. Or in the meantime, we will address every new acquisition as it comes. So thanks for hanging out with us today. We appreciate your time, and all of you everydayers. Love to see you guys back. Make sure that you like, sub, hit that bell. We'll be back with you tomorrow and on and on. Enjoy the free agency frenzy, and we'll talk to you then.